Hey. So I got a bunch of requests from people asking me to do a video on lower lash line brushes, which I realize is like, that can be kind of a difficult thing. So I'm going to share with you my favorite lower lash line brushes. We're going to focus on styles because tons of brands carry like different styles that will work. And I am going to be linking a bunch down below. Affordable will be my main goal, but I'll link like just a bunch. So for me, styles kind of like come and go. It really just depends on like my vibe at the time, what I reach for. Sometimes I use like lower lash line brushes for face things. Sometimes I use like, I was gonna say face brushes for lower lash line, not necessarily. But one thing that I would recommend is just kind of like removing the labels, because you might go on a website and see like lower lash line brushes, but you don't find exactly what you're looking for. And it's because maybe you need something that just isn't, I don't know, labeled that way. So the first style that I want to talk about is this guy right here. This is kind of a flatter brush. You might refer to this as kind of a shading brush. It gets a little bit flatter as you turn it, but it's got a little bit more of a dome. So the bristles are so distributed so that it creates more of a dome shape. This one in particular is from ColourPop. It's from a new collection that they have. I think it's from the Stone Cold Fox collection, brush collection. This is the E26. I would say that ColourPop and BH Cosmetics have some of my absolute favorite like brush sets that are super affordable. They are really good quality, they're synthetic, and they're just like a good investment for someone who doesn't want to spend a shit ton of money on brushes because they can get really expensive. And I think that they last pretty well. They're not going to last as long as like a Sigma brush, which is a lot more expensive but incredibly reliable, but I think they're really good. So this is a style of brush that is super important to me. I like to use it to buff along my, like very close to my lower lash line, but what it does is it really like allows you to get close to the lash line and create like a softer line along that area. So if it were a lot thinner, if it were more flat, like a concealer brush, like if the brush came to more of a point like that, when you turn to the side, then it's obviously going to be more concentrated on that tip and it's going to create a harder line. What I like about this is that it is domed quite a bit, it is tapered, so it allows you to create a little bit more of a gradient, but it does also allow for a nice amount of precision, which is great. So this is a style of brush that I like a lot. And you guys have for sure seen me use brushes like this pretty often. Next up is something like this. It's like a little domed brush. This is, once again, oh no, I'm sorry, this is from BH. This is a number 9 brush. I actually use this to contour my nose, which is why I say like just kind of use brushes for what they work for you. What? Don't feel like you are limited in using this just for your lower lash line or just for, I don't know, whatever. That's my point. Anyway, it's more of like a domed brush. So it's rounder and it's a little bit more domed. This is going to cover more surface area than this guy, considering the ColourPop brush is a little thinner when you turn it to the side. So obviously the number 9 brush by BH Cosmetics is a little bit thicker throughout. So this is something that I would pick up like a transition shade. It's sort of like a, what do I want to call that? Like a MAC 217, but for my lower lash line. So I like a brush that's this size so that I can cover more ground. I use my transition shade and I cover my entire eye bag, which I'm sure you guys have heard me refer to this little area right here. If you don't like to smoke out your lower lash line, if you have a smoother under eye area and you like to keep things a little bit tighter to your lash line, then this is probably going to be a little bit too big for you. Keep in mind the fact that I have pretty big eyes and my lower lash line area, like my whole under eye, I do have like quite a lot of room down here and I like to smoke it out. This could be a little bit too big. Sorry, I'm choked. This could be a little bit too big for someone with smaller eyes. This brush from Unit is actually quite similar, but if you take a look, it actually does taper a lot more. So the BH brush is a little bit more domed, and the Unit brush, this is Unit 201, it's a little bit more tapered, so it's going to create a little bit more detail. So the majority of the product is going to go right at that like tip. So it's actually going to allow for more precision. You could also use this for like up in your crease. But if you think this domed brush would be too big, or you want something that's like similar, but you find that like it just applies too much product, you might want to go for something like this Unit 201 brush. Next up is the Hank & Henry Monica brush. This is a tiny blending brush. So it's a little more domed on top, but it's pretty small. Let me compare it to like a typical, oh, how did that happen? So I wanted to compare it to a typical blending brush. So this is a MAC 217. This is what I usually use to like go in and do my transition shade up in my crease. So if I compare it to the MAC 217, you can see it's a lot smaller. Obviously the MAC 217 gets a little bit wider as you turn it. It's a little more tapered, but it's domed. What am I saying? But it's more concentrated on the bottom, and then it domes a little bit up here. If I feel them, this is a little bit more fluffy, and this is slightly more like concentrated, but the longer bristles allows for like a good amount of blending, but it's just like concentrating that product a little bit more because it's a smaller brush. But this is really, really good for like really smoking out your lower lash line or blending your lower lash line. For your upper lid, a lot of the time people will use like a larger blending brush. This might be a little bit too big, but something big to kind of like blend out, you know, anything that like maybe you've taken it out too far, you need to erase a little bit, or you just need to soften. So you go with like a clean, larger brush. That's kind of like what this could be for your lower lash line. You could also use this if you have a lot of real estate like me to really smoke out your lower lash line. I actually use this to highlight my nose, but it's excellent for your lower lash line. I have other brushes that I use for that. For instance, this guy right here from that Morphe collection that has no fucking name. It's just black and gold, and I never know how to recommend it to you guys, but it looks like they look like this. I don't know. Basically, these tiny blending brushes are just like necessities in general, though. Morphe has really good ones. I love the Hank & Henry brushes. But yeah, honestly, Morphe has really good ones, so it's affordable. Great. Speaking of Morphe, this is the M205 brush. I love this. It's kind of like a tiny little concealer brush, but it's pretty flexible, surprisingly. Like it's not as tightly packed as something like this, which is the Morphe M224 brush. This is a little bit more stiff. Like the tip is a lot sharper, and the bristles are a little bit more stiff. And then obviously, like, I mean, this is just a larger brush overall. But what I like about this is you can use it to highlight your brow bone, which is what I use it for. I also like to use it to highlight my inner corner. But what I like about it is it's nice and flexible, but it's precise. So sort of similar to this. You can get close to your lower lash line, but if you turn and compare, this tapers a lot more. It becomes a lot more sharp at the tip. So if you're looking for something that's really going to like help create that line, but you want it to be softer, you don't want it to be so sharp, this is a really great option. Okay, so this is actually from that same Stone Cold Fox collection from ColourPop. This is the E29. This is a super tiny little brush. What happened to my thumb? It's just lip liners everywhere. Anyway, this is super precise. I love this kind of brush. It's very versatile. It's actually something that I like to use to highlight my inner corner, get super close to my lash line. I'll highlight my brow bone with it. I like to use this kind of a brush to like spot conceal even. But for the lower lash line, what I like about it, I don't even know what I would compare it to. Maybe this guy? But obviously you can see that it's like much smaller. It kind of looks like a shader brush, but it's really, really tiny. So the precision is just like amazing, you know? It's a little bit too small to like apply a shimmery shadow to like your top lid. You could do it, but it's just like so detailed. It's really great for like getting into your inner corner, getting really close to the lower lash line, even cleaning up a wing, something like that. It's a very versatile brush. All right, next is the BH number 11 brush. So this is like what I've been talking about. I've mentioned this a couple times, but it gets super sharp up at this top. So it is similar to this guy from ColourPop, where it is like a little bit wider, but it's not quite as domed. It goes much more to a sharp point, similar to the concealer brush. So they become extremely tapered at the top. Now, what I love about this brush is you can really concentrate that like dark shadow and get super duper close to the lash line, so you can like get that precision like right in here. I like to do that especially with really, really dark shades like a black or a dark brown or whatever. So it just adds that extra precision. It allows you to create a sharper line closer to your lash line without that shadow going everywhere. Because if you've seen my other eyeshadow videos, you know that I like to layer, and typically the way I describe it is as the shadows get darker, the brushes get smaller or more detailed, which is why I have so many different ones. I'll have like a fluffier blending brush, then I'll have something like a domed brush like this, and then I'll have a more precise brush. So it could be a light transition shade, slightly more deep shade or medium shade, and then your dark shade. And then finally, this is obviously just kind of like a necessity for everyone, I feel, an angled brush. This is the number 70 by KVD Beauty. So it gets super duper skinny, but it is angled. And what I like to use this for is to create my little lower lash inner corner situation down here. So this is, again, a versatile brush. You could use this to get really, really close to the lash line, whatever, but I love it for doing my inner corner. It's so skinny, so tight, and it just like gives you that precision. It's crazy. It's my favorite brush to do my inner corner. I don't like using liners. I like using powder. So that's why I like this brush, but you could also use liner with this because I'm pretty sure it's for brows. But anyway, this is a necessity. Again, keep in mind your eye shape. Keep in mind the size of your eyes. If you are watching a YouTuber and you're like, that she's using this brush and like I love it and I really want to buy it, and then you get it and it's way too big, it could possibly be because in proportion to the rest of this person's face, their eyes are just much bigger than yours. So keep in mind the size of your features. I've definitely seen plenty of people using like really, really large blending brushes for their lid, and then I have the same brush and I'm like, how? This is way too big. So everyone's eyes are obviously different sizes. If you have hooded lids or you just don't have like as much space, keep it smaller. Morphe is excellent for tiny brushes. They are so good, super affordable. Elf also has like really good, just like tiny brushes, and I will link all of the ones that I would recommend down below. Hope that was helpful. Let me know what your favorite lower lash line brushes are, and I'll see you next time, maybe, hopefully. Bye.